Hello everyone, this is James Song here. Welcome back to my video. As you can see on the screen, we have speaking session prepared for you today. And the last question of the speaking section, question 4, ready to go. So as you can see on the screen, there is no reading passage, as you know. Excuse me. There is no reading passage, as you know. It's just a listening passage. We write notes simultaneously while listening passage is playing, and we need to summarize and answer the question. We only have 20 seconds to prepare, and we have 60 seconds to speak to score points. So let's look at the question using points and examples from the lecture. So that's listening. Explain 2 environmental conditions that help preserve archaeological artifacts. Okay, so the listening is going to provide 2 environmental conditions that help preserve archaeological artifacts, right? So let's rock and roll. So listen to the passage and write notes at the same time.
Listen to part of a lecture in an archaeology class.
Okay, so as we know, archaeologists discover objects from past civilizations. Stuff like old pottery, old tools, even sometimes old bits of fabric. And they examine these artifacts to learn about past civilizations. But why are some artifacts preserved well enough to last for thousands of years, while others just wear away and disappear? Well, a lot of it has to do with the environmental conditions in the area where the artifacts are found. Artifacts are preserved better in environments where the bacteria that cause decay are less likely to grow. So let's look at 2 environmental conditions that discourage bacterial growth and thus help preserve archaeological artifacts. One environmental condition that inhibits bacterial growth and helps preserve artifacts is aridity, lack of moisture. Bacteria that cause decay can't survive well in dry environments, and artifacts don't decay as fast in arid climates without much moisture. So many of the best preserved archaeological artifacts have been found in such climates. For example, in the deserts of Egypt, archaeologists have found tombs more than 2,000 years old with brightly colored wall paintings in them. And those wall paintings? Well, their colors were still as clear and bright as a painting made today. Another environmental condition is lack of oxygen. Bacteria, like all living things, depend on oxygen to grow. So when there's no oxygen present, they can't grow and cause decay. So artifacts are usually well preserved when they end up in environments that contain little or no oxygen, like, for example, the bottom of the ocean, which is where archaeologists found an ancient ship that had sunk and settled into the mud at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea. The ship was carrying vases, and the vases were still intact and remarkably well preserved.
Okay, so we got the notes down, so let's talk about them. So let's look at the question again. So all we have to do is explain 2 environmental conditions that help preserve archaeological artifacts. So that will be full mark for us. So this prompt will be on the screen when we start our answer. So we can create our first sentence introduction by just looking at this question prompt. We could easily say, in the lecture, professor explains 2 environmental conditions that help preserve archaeological artifacts, okay? By using points and example. So first sentence done. And this was like an introductory and the thesis of the listening passage. And we don't need this because to answer the question, the topic sentence, we just need to mention two environmental conditions. What are they? First, a place that has less moisture, not much moisture, or aridity. That's the first environmental condition, right? Right? And what's the second environmental condition? The place with very little oxygen or no oxygen, okay, less oxygen. So our answers are done, okay? So I wrote this down to show you, but we don't need to mention this part at all to score better points. So information here was archaeologists find objects about past civilization, from past civilization, and they examine to learn the past. And it's interesting why some artifacts are well preserved while others not. And environmental condition has a lot to do with it. And it's better preserved where bacteria cannot grow and cannot decay the artifacts, right? And some student, I bet, might say this sentence, which is fine. Okay, you could say, professor mentions the places that can preserve the artifacts better is where there is no bacteria can grow, so it cannot decay the artifacts. You can say that. Pretty long sentence, but you can say that. But you don't need it to score perfect score, because it's not like we are not going to talk about where bacteria cannot grow. We will. So we could easily say, first environmental condition is aridity, which means lack of moisture. See, where there is a lack of moisture or bacteria cannot grow very well in very dry condition. We're going to say that. So it's kind of repetition in summary. Like, you can say it here, but we don't need it because we're going to explain less moisture will help preserve artifacts because bacteria cannot grow very well to decay objects in dry condition. We're going to say that. So we don't need this. Okay, it's just waste of our time, right? Yeah. So, for example, desert of Egypt, it's self-explanatory. You could say it's dry because it's desert, but it's just a summary, so you don't need to say that word for word. So desert of Egypt, where it is extremely dry, of course. In there, ancient tombs from 2,000 years ago was discovered. And this is not the main part. Only main part is a desert because it's dry. The main part is here. Wall painting inside the tomb were extremely well preserved. Okay, so by saying this, you are saying, because they just found the tomb. It's not a well preserved or not, or nothing to do with it. They just found the site in a very dry place. So what is the artifact that is well preserved in a dry place? That's wall painting. Okay, so this should be the focus of the artifacts it's found that is well preserved. Okay, so inside the tomb, wall painting was found and it was in a very good condition. Why? Because it was found in desert of Egypt. How? Because it's very dry. Bang. Okay. And the second, as you heard, second environmental condition is where there is lack of oxygen, very little oxygen or no oxygen. Again, we're going to explain the reason where lack of oxygen will help preserve the artifacts is because bacteria will not be able to grow very well without oxygen, because bacteria needs to needs oxygen in order to grow. We're going to say that. We're going to say it right here, right? So do we need this sentence? Do we need it to get the full mark? No. We can just attack straight away with one sentence introduction. Yeah, so introduction and hit the body right away. And we can make sure we finish our answer in 1 minute and also get the perfect score. So the second paragraph contents were: second environmental condition is lack of oxygen, because bacteria feeds on oxygen, needs oxygen to grow well, but without oxygen, bacteria cannot grow to decay artifacts, right? Yeah. For example, bottom of the ocean where there is very little oxygen, ancient ships were found, exactly same, right? So itself is not the artifact, it's like a site. And inside the ships, vases or vases, however you prefer to pronounce, in ships were very well preserved, because we said it, because there was a very little oxygen. I mean, once you said this, if you kind of forgot or omit bottom of the ocean where there is very little oxygen, if you omit very little oxygen, I don't think you're going to get deduction, because you already said it and it's within the same paragraph. So it's implying bottom of the ocean has very little oxygen. Just like here, how desert of Egypt is a very dry place, obviously, right? So don't worry too much if you said, for example, the bottom of the ocean and you forgot to say where there is very little oxygen. I think it's okay, right? For example, bottom of the ocean, it's implying very little oxygen. They found the ancient ships, and the vases in the ship were still in a very good condition and well preserved. Within the same paragraph says it will be well preserved in a place where there is a less oxygen, just like the first body, okay? And it gets a little more difficult, even for me, for sure, because it's 20 seconds. So we really have to just pick the words we're going to change into full sentence, and try to go through the full answer, not saying the full sentence, but just picking up the words we're going to cover to confidently finish our preparation in 20 seconds. All right, 20 seconds, let's try. Two environmental condition: one, less moisture, because cannot survive in dry place. Example, Egypt, tombs, wall painting, well preserved. Less oxygen, bacteria need oxygen to grow, can decay. Bottom of the ocean, ancient ships, faces inside, well preserved, no oxygen. See, it's a lot tougher. Like 30 seconds, 20 seconds, only 10 seconds difference, but 30 to 20, that's like 33% different. Like, they're giving you, 33% less preparation time compared to question 2 and 3. So you need to really practice hard to get used to sharply and concisely preparing within 20 seconds. Okay, so need practice. All right, so let me go through one more time. Maybe I shouldn't, because I've already done it. So first sentence, in the lecture, professor explains two environmental conditions that help preserve archaeological artifacts by using points and examples. First environmental condition is aridity, which is less moisture. because bacteria cannot survive without moisture. It cannot decay the artifacts. For example, in the desert of Egypt, ancient tombs that were 2,000 years old were found, and wall paintings inside were still preserved really well. Second environmental condition is less of oxygen. Bacteria needs oxygen to grow. So without oxygen, bacteria cannot decay. The artifacts, for example, at the bottom of the ocean, ancient ships were found, and vases inside the ship were still very well preserved. That's a full mark, guys. Okay, great, fantastic. So let's practice for real within 60 seconds. Here we go. Here we go. The professor in the lecture explains two environmental conditions that help preserve archaeological artifacts. One environmental condition is the lack of moisture. Bacteria that decay artifacts cannot survive well without much moisture, so artifacts are better preserved in a dry environment. For example, in the deserts of Egypt, 2,000 years old tombs were found. Brightly colored wall paintings in the tombs were still well preserved. Another environmental condition is the lack of oxygen. Bacteria depend on oxygen to grow, so when there's no oxygen, they cannot grow and cause decay. Therefore, artifacts are well preserved where there is no or little oxygen. For example, an ancient ship was found at the bottom of the ocean. The vases in the ship were still well preserved. Something like this, guys, okay? And if you want to say one less sentence, I think it's good to kind of, conclude, okay, with therefore and so, okay? But the second paragraph, maybe, you didn't need to have this sentence, but ideally, you explain the reason and kind of conclude strongly, okay? Explain the reason for your topic sentence and conclude strongly. And then examples were provided. So super concise job to summarize the example is also required. There you have it. Too easy? Maybe not. All right. So thank you guys for watching. I hope today's lesson was once again helpful. Once again, I hope so. Helpful, and no doubt I'll do my best. I'll try my hardest to come up with another great lesson that can help you improve your TOEFL score. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And let's keep going. And I'll see you in my next class. Thank you very much and have a great day. Bye.